Hello, everyone. Brother Al McClaney with this week's stewardship video. And let me first say, yes, I am okay. Those of you who know, I am a graduate of University of Alabama and Nick Saban's retirement. A lot of you reached out. Yes, I'm okay. Wish him well in his retirement, and he is the greatest of all time and excited for that new beginning in his life. So, as we're making this video, it is a couple of days before MLK, Martin Luther King, the celebration of his birthday and the holiday on Monday. And so, wanted to reflect and just calling this one Freedom and reflected on Dr. Martin Luther King, and that was a daily bread. I get the electronic version of the daily bread devotional that inspired this. And one of the more famous quotes of Dr. Martin Luther King says, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." So before we go too far, let's read the disclaimer. No advice should be seen as recommendation or an endorsement, as I am not a licensed financial advisor, and this is for educational purposes only. So please do your own research. As I said, what inspired this was a daily bread devotional. And what it said, it was 3 days before a bomb blast rocked his home in January 1957. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had an encounter that marked him for the rest of his life. After receiving a threatening phone call, King found himself pondering an exit strategy. Yeah, actually, an exit strategy from the civil rights movement. Then prayers emerged from his soul. "I am here taking a stand for what I believe is right, but now I'm afraid I have nothing left. I've come to this point where I can't face it alone." After this prayer, there came quite an assurance, King noted. "Almost at once, my fears began to go. My uncertainty disappeared. I was ready to face anything." And the scripture verse that that daily bread cited was Isaiah 43, verses 2 and through in the Living Bible. It says, "When you go through deep waters and great trouble, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you, for I am the Lord your God." And Rick Warren's devotional said, "God will support you in your trouble." So I thought about this because many of us have gone through where our finances have not been a point of comfort. Our finances have not been an area that brings peace. In fact, that uncertainty is not to the maybe the physical extent of being threatened like Dr. King with his life, but for us, it could seem as though we're in dire straits, and it could be facing something. I was watching a movie last night in which the person had to make a choice, and this is real life for some people. It's not a movie, between eating and insulin. And some of us are facing that with our finances. Some of it is just an overwhelming amount of debt that we're dealing with. But here Isaiah is saying that uh, for us believers, we have a hope. We have an unbreakable foundation, which is the Lord. And I encourage you, if you haven't prayed over your finances, sometimes we've tried everything except praying over our finances, that we do so, just like Dr. Martin Luther King did in January 1957. And from that, he said, "Almost at once, my fears began to go. My uncertainty disappeared. I was ready to face anything." And along with that, those prayers over your finances, as James says, putting your faith in action, the principles that we teach on within the video. Follow those principles. God gives you peace through the prayer, and then He gives you the plan in His principles, and that's what we're highlighting when we go through the principles in the stewardship video. We've also pointed out different resources. Go to those resources that are Bible based resources, biblically based principles when it comes to that. So that brings us back to the what I titled this is freedom, right? as freedom as we go into Dr. Martin Luther King's weekend before we celebrate his birthday. And so with that, I want to go into and take a look at the earnings that we are getting into earnings season. And we kicked off this past week with major reports from JP Morgan Chase, Delta, but the ones I want to highlight, Wells Fargo, BlackRock, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, because that ushers in the financial area those are the institutions that lead us in every earnings season. And here is a calendar that you can pause looking at the whole month of the different anticipated financial earnings seasons. We've got Goldman Sachs. When we come off the holiday on Friday, the market's closed on not Friday, on Monday, market's closed, but Goldman Sachs is going to be reporting Tuesday, Morgan Stanley, PNC Bank, Charles Schwab, Discover, all of these you can pause this that we have coming up for the month. Got Visa on the 25th, Progressive Insurance on the 24th of January. So all of these are leading us in. 31st is Aflac and MasterCard. MetLife, the company I work at, is reporting. So all during the month, with the beginning happening this past week, we had some reports, and then going into after MLK, we've got all of these reporting. Regions Bank ends next week, but all of these, and that tends to move the market because it's the financials. So specifically, next week, here are all the companies, the highlighted companies for next week. We talked about many of these: Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Charles Schwab. All of these would be interesting to watch and see what the market, how it responds and reacts to it. And so I showed this slide last week, but I want to show it again because there was some kind of change in the market's projection when it comes to rate cuts. And we looked, there was a survey done by Goldman Sachs who's reporting this week, or this upcoming week, where do you see the most attractive opportunity set in early 2024? And 30% of the people who were polled said rate cuts. And this was, investors, right? Probably retail investors like you and me, those of you who invest. But 30% said from rate cuts. U.S. elections, only 8%. We're going to talk about that too, because I put that slide back in there also. And so with that, I want to show this slide, which has been a change. So it was steadily decreasing in the last couple of weeks of a rate cut happening in March. So this represents a rate cut. So we're currently at 525 to 550 basis points. And so this represents 19% that it's going to stay at that level. Now, here's 500 or 525 basis point, which is a rate cut. It's now back up to 76.9% in March. We looked at this a couple of weeks ago, and this was down to like 50%, 40, 50%, because the economy was actually, the market was still going up while the economy, inflation was going down, unemployment numbers were looking good. And now we've had some selling in the last couple of weeks, days, where there's been a lot of selling in the market. And now this is going back up again to where it's projecting a modest rate cut in March, down 25 basis point, which is a quarter point. Interesting. This is the other slide that I want to show, because not only Martin Luther King's birthday, the holiday on Monday, but the Iowa caucuses, which traditionally, every 4 years, ushers in kind of the beginning of the voting cycle when it comes to the elections. And we pointed out this slide before about there's only been 4 years or 4 election years where the market major, and this is, and I'm counting these as presidential major president, which included presidential elections during that year, in which the market has not been positive. And only 4 times has that happened. And this was, you can see it here in the year 2000 and 1940 was an election year. 1932 and 2008 had also recessions in there, right? So even combining those two, there's only 4 times that it's been less, it's not been positive. All these other years, it's been at least, 4 or 5%, positive, which the bulk of them, if you count them up, it's been more than 10% positive when it comes to the S&P. And this is the S&P is looking at where it's been a positive year, a 10%, at least a 10% yield on the or return on the S&P. So that's a stat you may look at, but only God knows the future. We don't. This is just, projections, probability, statistics, whatever you want to put to it, but only God knows the future. So with that, here's the market. So when this was QQQ, last couple of weeks when we were having all this sell-off, that's when you were seeing the rate cuts at the higher percentages that, hey, this is going to happen. Then it went up. Now we've been having some days of buying, right? Which you would think if this keeps up, then and the market keeps going up, that percentage of a rate cut is probably going to come back down again. But we shall see. So we've definitely had just in 2024 volatility, and that's what it is. It's up, it's down. Volatility is just not going down. It's just sways like we're seeing here. Oh, wow, look at all this selling. Oh, and here we go with the roller coaster going back up again. So that's some things that I've heard people also say we're going to have volatility in 2004. 2024 is it 2004, 2024. Same thing with SPY. A little bit more selling when it comes to SPY. Well, that's it for the week. This stewardship video. Hope everyone has a great Martin Luther King birthday. If you're off, some of doing service. We're in Dallas Fort Worth area. There's projecting a lot of cold weather and possibly wintry mix. So some events have been canceled and moved. So I hope that's not the case in your area, but I have seen with a lot of the country, there's a lot of weather events that are going on. So be safe. And if you're doing a service project, do it. That'll be a good thing to do also if you're able to do it on Dr. Martin Luther King's the celebration of that day. So with that, as always, my pastor Denny Dwight Davis says, have a good week, keep a good spirit. And we say on the stewardship video, remember, Jesus is Lord, but we are his faithful stewards operating on his principles. And remember what we talked about earlier. If you haven't prayed over your finances, do so. If you're having a healthy financial situation, pray over your finances to give you, especially if you have abundance. What has God blessed you? The reason why you have that abundance. So until next week, we'll see you next week. Bye.